In 100 years, you, me, everybody listening to this episode of this podcast will be dead. Gone. In 100 years, we will all be gone. Nothing will matter. It puts into perspective some of the things that we take as very big problems or big challenges or big embarrassments. In 100 years, none of this will matter. None of the people concerned will matter. We will all be dead, dust to dust, ashes to ashes.
My father told me life is not a bit.
This is Origins Africa podcast, where we explore the origin stories of people who have made and are making their dreams come true, asking the what, the when, the how, and the why. I'm Osheye, and on this episode, the first of a two-part conversation, we meet John Obidi, Director of Growth and Partnerships at ABiT Networks, a blockchain and cryptocurrency solutions company, as well as the founder of Headstart Africa community, formerly Smart B Camp, a community dedicated to closing the knowledge gap among working professionals in Nigeria. You will hear John talk about his journey into blockchain and his current role at ABiT Networks. He will also talk about his early childhood experiences, as well as the defining moments that shaped who he's become today. This interview was recorded in April 2021. Over the years, John has evolved and has worn many hats.
Thought leader, digital media. But today, in this, sometimes even philosopher. But today, in this present incarnation, I'm the Director of Growth at ABiT Network. ABiT Network is a blockchain and cryptocurrency company that creates blockchain solutions for everyone. And so that's what I major on right now. I'm in the business of blockchain and cryptocurrency, and I help the company drive growth. I just joined the board last month. By the time this episode is aired, I think the announcement will be public. So that's what I do now. Even though, I've come a long way. I used to be a programmer in my way previous life. That is pre-2013. And
Okay.
I used to be a web designer then, and that was the beginning of this whole journey. So, but at this point, what I do now is harnessing all my past experience into driving growth for ABiT Network, the blockchain and cryptocurrency company whose board I just became a part of.
Would start from there, and it's interesting because I think when I was doing the research in you, it was in 2018 or was it 2019, you had been interested and curious about blockchain and cryptocurrency, and then there was a training in Dubai that you had gone on to attend to learn more about it. So between then and now, how have you evolved to now become someone who's driving growth and partnership in ABiT Network?
Oh, it's fantastic. I have always loved tech, and so back in 2018, I thought, people were talking about cryptocurrency, back in Nigeria. I was in Lagos at the time. I was based in Lagos. And then people were talking about it. And I felt embarrassed that as someone who prides myself as a person in tech, I knew next to nothing about it. So, I'm someone who you could always ask anything on tech and I could answer you. But at that time, ask me about blockchain, cryptocurrency. I knew nothing. It was like, I'm like, what is this? It made no sense to me. It was hard. And I felt ashamed that I thought it was hard, because I've always been a top student in school throughout, so for something to for people, I see guys on the streets speaking fluent crypto, and I was unable to. So I said, you know what, instead of looking for where to pick up the pieces, I'm going to look for an event in Dubai or an event anywhere in the world to attend. And at the time, there was one happening in Dubai. It was called the Future Blockchain Conference. It's yearly. So you know what, I'm going to Dubai. And Dubai at the time, and even still now, was marketing themselves and positioning themselves as the blockchain capital of the world. So I said, okay, if that's what they call themselves, where else to learn this than at the capital, at the blockchain capital? So I booked a flight, came to Dubai, and attended the event.
How much was the conference? Could I ask that?
So I found the tickets on Eventbrite. The conference itself wasn't very expensive. I think even the VIP tickets were like $200.
Okay.
So we could pay flights to and from Dubai. I mean, $200 wasn't much. And I think they were even giving discounts. So if you had a regular ticket, they were giving free upgrades to VIP. So I just took that one. Yeah. So it wasn't really that expensive. And a lot of these events happened for free. Again, this was pre-COVID. So a lot of physical events were happening. Not so many are happening now. Hopefully that changes soon. But yeah, so I took advantage of that and I came and I always able to attend events to learn stuff. There's stuff you will learn at events that you just cannot learn online. At that event, I met this 22-year-old American, and I just went up to him. We started having a conversation, and I asked him about his business, and that dude owned a cryptocurrency exchange. This dude was a millionaire, and he was just there to have fun, to network. And so I asked him about the business, and he was telling me step by step the process of opening up a cryptocurrency exchange. And I was like, oh my goodness, this was something that I could not Google as at then. But I was listening to someone who did not care about writing books, did not care about releasing YouTube videos, none of those things, was just concerned about getting bigger at his business. And so at events, you get to learn from a lot of people from all over the world. And so it was a great foundational moment for me. And it helped build the foundation for what I'm doing now. I knew I wanted to be in this space.
And this started with you reaching out at the conference, not like you were then just listening to the panelists or the speakers.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I went out I took people's cards, give them my own cards. I asked them questions. I wanted to know the different angles of the industry, what they were doing. And that was my mission there. I mean, if it was just to listen, you could sit at home and watch it on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah. But you need to, a lot of the value will come from those that are not speaking, those that are just attending. There's a lot of stakeholders there in the audience. And that's what I went for.
Did it immediately make sense to you?
Well, some things made sense to me. But I mean, you hear from 5 different people. I mean, it all starts to come together. I attended a couple of keynotes, a couple of breakout workshops, and everything started to make sense. And when I got back to Lagos, I started experimenting on my own with buying cryptocurrency, exchanging it for Naira, which was not yet banned at the time, but it's banned now. So that's how I started.
Were there a couple of mistakes or losses at the beginning?
Well, people make losses when they are trading cryptocurrency. I was not trading cryptocurrency then. I was just experimenting because I heard that cryptocurrency was the new money. So it could be used as money. So I was more interested in the use case in using cryptocurrency to pay for goods and services, and also accepting cryptocurrency as a means of payment for my own goods and services. Because there's this thing I thought about in 2018, called the third world fence. And that is a wall that locks out third world natives and third world residents from fully participating in the global economy. And I'll explain that third world fence. So Mark Zuckerberg and the Google guys, somewhere in Silicon Valley can create a Google, can create a Facebook, and they can reach out from the United States and take my money here in Lagos, Nigeria. But can I also create something like that and reach out and take their money from the US? No. Why? No PayPal, no Stripe. That is the third world fence. So at that time, there was a lot of issues with Nigerians who had great value to share with the world, but payment was a big problem. This was before, the pay stacks and co really came in to start solving. So I started experimenting with how cryptocurrency could help us scale that fence. And so that's what really drew me to the payment side, So if it's just payment sites, you don't really lose money. It's those that are trading and using it as an investment and a store of value that, have the risk of losing and the prospect of gaining.
Okay. From your experimentation, any interesting insights you found or lessons?
Well, it was cool. I mean, you could, buy stuff in crypto. You could sell stuff. It was good. One thing that happened though was that, while I was experimenting, I accepted Bitcoin as a means of payment for some of my products at the time, on my Luno wallet. And to be honest, the amount of money I was charging at that time for that product was pretty small. So, and most people actually paid cash and with bank transfers and all. If a tiny percentage paid me in Bitcoin. So what happened was that I actually forgot about the Bitcoin that was in that wallet because it was very small.
Oh, okay.
It was in 2017. It was when this year people started shouting, Bitcoin to the moon, to the moon, to the moon. I said, wait. All these people. I was now feeling, when people are shouting about their gains in Bitcoin, if you did not invest early, you will just be quiet at one corner and be like, this is making too much noise. Please lower your voice, So I was in that gang. I was like, I've heard, we've heard. You are making more Bitcoin, we've heard. I said, wait, what happened to that my Luno? Because when Nigeria, blocked off explicit cryptocurrency transactions, people weren't talking about Luno anymore. Because the appeal of the Luno wallets back then was, I think they were the only ones that you could pay, you could use your card, your Nigerian card, to pay to buy cryptocurrency. And if you had cryptocurrency, you could cash it out from Luno. They were the only ones in Nigeria. But the moment the Nigerian government outlawed that activity, nobody really cared much about Luno. People would rather prefer to go to Binance and Coinbase and Trust Wallet and so on. Right. So even I had forgotten about Luno until this rave of I said, wait. That time I was using Luno. I had some coins there. I just went to check it. Almost the money I had there had gone like times 5.
Wow.
It was times 5. It was interesting. So yeah, that was just the serendipitous moments. Yeah. So
I see.
So yeah, money I just forgot there, had increased in value because it was denominated in Bitcoin as at 2018. So yeah, that's just one interesting thing I've discovered. Well, today I've learned the trading side of cryptocurrency and I'm trading now, even though I didn't come
How did that happen? How did you learn?
Because I mean, you sit on the internet and you see everybody shouting Dogecoin. Instead of asking God when, you jump into the fray and ask how. So this year, 2020, actually, since January 2021, since January 2021, I've been reading all I can about cryptocurrency and using it to generate wealth and yeah, so I learned, I practiced, and that's how I got into it. And of course, when I accepted joining the board of a blockchain cryptocurrency company.
How did it happen?
Well, they saw my work in Nigeria and the CEO heard that I had relocated to Dubai. I just moved to Dubai in November last year.
Okay.
So he had seen my work with Headstart Africa and my awards and everything I had done internationally. And when he heard I was now based in Dubai, he said, we're just opening up an office in Dubai and I'll be coming there soon. Can we have a conversation? And he came over, we had a conversation. And it just seemed like a fantastic idea. And I came on board. Yeah. So, but that's coming on board, that even made me go and research even more because I can't be directing something I don't have a full grasp of. So even though I knew it, on the periphery before, this made me go deep and spend hours and hours learning and consuming content on what this was about.
Did you have any doubts before accepting the offer?
Well, yes, because this is a company that also has a cryptocurrency exchange and all that. It's kind of like being a bank, right? And if you are like a bank, you are holding people's money or you are in charge of people's money. There's the risk of something going wrong, and you being seen as fraudulent. I mean, I built my name over the years. You could Google me and not find anything negative. You know, anything you find about me online is about my awards, my exploits, what my followers and my audience, good things they have to say about me, nothing negative. So building that name over the years, you know, and, you know, you are directing growth, or you're on the board, a part owner of a cryptocurrency exchange, you're holding people's money. What happens? So one of my biggest fears is, okay, what happens if the exchange gets hacked? Because even the best of the best, they get hacked and people's money is moved. You know, Binance got hacked, you know, not too long ago. I think I don't know what the year was. Another one, KuCoin, got hacked the other day. Now, we have never been hacked, but even the best of the best get hacked. Is there a potential reputation damage that comes with that? I don't know. Those were the fears I had. Perhaps they were unfounded, but, you know, I thought about it thoroughly before accepting it. I'm like, you know what? Let's give it a go.
So you had the fears and you just decided to put them aside and give it a go.
Yes, because you only live once.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And how has it been?
My philosophy is this, that look, in 70 years, or let me be generous, in 80 years, okay, let me just be more encompassing. In 100 years, you, me, everybody listening to this episode of this podcast will be dead. Gone. In 100 years, we will all be gone. Nothing will matter. It puts into perspective some of the things that we take as very big problems or big challenges or big embarrassments. In 100 years, none of this will matter. None of the people concerned will matter. We will all be dead, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. Now, that is not an excuse to live life recklessly, but it is a challenge for us to live our best lives. If there's anything that you know you should be doing, it's somewhere, you know, in I think in the book of Proverbs, whatever you put your hand to do it with all your might, because in the land of the dead where you are going, there is no work, there is no wisdom, there is no understanding, there is no knowledge. So this is the realm where we can express wisdom and knowledge and excellence and virtue and creativity. And by all means, we should give it our all, because our time is finite. It's what makes us different from immortal beings, if they exist. It's what makes us different. Because we are mortal, we live our lives with a sense of urgency to get the best, to get good stuff done. And so why not? So I feel like if you spend all your time contemplating and thinking and wondering, is this the right move, back and forth, time is passing you by, man. You know, make your best analysis, and based on your better judgments, take action. Whatever happens, take responsibility.
Interesting. But how do you then draw that balance between living recklessly and living your best life?
Well, reckless is subjective, I think. So for me, jumping out of an airplane now in 2021, jumping out of an airplane, parachuting, I might call that reckless, right? In 2015, I did not call that reckless. There's actually a video of me paragliding in Brazil. The video is on my IGTV. You know, it is the most dangerous thing I ever did. I don't know why, you know, and yeah, you know, I was a younger man then. I was trying to impress my girlfriend, you know, who was Brazilian. So I didn't want to chicken out and look like, you know, I couldn't do it. So we drove up to the top of a mountain peak in Brazil, and, you know, it's crazy. And I jumped off, and I was so frightened, but I didn't show it. You know, and then we landed. I was like, yeah, did it. But I don't see myself doing that again, you know, because now, you know, I've grown so much, and so many people and institutions depend on me. What happens if I die? You know, I get to think about those things now. As at 2015, well, I didn't have that many people who would miss me, or that many people who would, say, oh, if John Obidi is dead or out of the picture, this is going to stop working, that's going to stop working. But I have that now, and so I have to be more careful and conscious of the things I say yes to, the things I say no to, and I've got to just be more responsible because my life is no longer just about me. So that helps me draw that line. I can't just, when people say on social media, oh, do what makes you happy. If it makes you happy, it's okay. Nah, stop it. That's for people who don't have as much responsibility. As we say, with great power comes great responsibility. When you come into a place of leadership, you understand that even your personal choices have gravitas and affect not just you, but other people. And as you grow even bigger, they don't just affect other people. They might start to have an institutional effect. If anything happens in Jeff Bezos's life, it affects the institution. So he can't even do things just on his own. He has to think of the bigger picture. So yes.
What does that then mean does it mean you don't live your life for just you, or you don't do things you like or that pleasure you, or you always have to think about others?
Yes, you always have to. If you're a leader, you always have to. Now, if I were nobody, I'm not saying I've attained any by any means, but if you were a person of lesser consequence to the public, fine, you can live life the way you like. You can really live life the way you like, and nobody cares. Nobody will bat an eyelid. But you remember when Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he smoked marijuana on Joe Rogan's podcast. The minute he did that, the shares of Tesla dropped drastically. Now we can make the argument that, okay, well, over time, the share price, it bounced back, but it dropped in that moment, showing that what one private individual does, because of how big he has become, and not just big, but how consequential he has become to the destinies of other people. What he does affects other people. And so,
even though he probably does smoke marijuana,
he probably does that in private, but bringing that out on camera in public, it can have consequences. There was a time that Elon Musk was tweeting pretty recklessly in the past, and he was fined once or a couple of times by the SEC because they believed that his tweets were having effects on the stock market. Can you imagine that? So they literally had to seize his phone. Well, not only seize his phone, but they had to,
there's some form of restriction.
They had to put some restrictions on him that you can't just be going crazy tweeting like that. The stock market is depending on your tranquility and state of mind. just relax, man. So after he was fined a couple of times, then he stopped it, and it's been good ever since. He has now carried that behavior to cryptocurrency to help us pump the price of Dogecoin. So what one man does can affect a lot of things. Even though, this way, when I was pumping Dogecoin, I was invested in Dogecoin. So he helped make me some money by tweeting about Dogecoin, and the price went up and I was able to sell. But it just shows it can work in the positive. It can also work in the negative. So we always have to be mindful. It doesn't apply to every human being, but those of us who have stepped forward and said, we want to be public figures, we want to be leaders of institutions, it's just a responsibility of the path that it demands.
Okay. So in last year, November, you decided to move to Dubai. Could you talk about what prompted that?
Yeah, so I'd been wanting to move for a while. But I'd been slowing down about it. But I just thought that Dubai was a great place to expand from. I love the fact that it's got the kind of incubating ecosystem that suits what I want to do. They have the people, they have the personnel, they have the culture. And I thought, let's try it out, see if it works out for me for a while. And I just might make it more permanent. So I did that for a couple of months. I liked it, and I just chose to make it my base.
Was it an easy decision to move, leave everything in Nigeria and start afresh, or start a new life in Dubai?
Oh yeah, it was pretty easy. I mean, I'm not married, so I didn't have that many consultations to make. But I've always built my business in the cloud. So I never had a physical office in Nigeria. Everything was online, and before then I used to leave, go to some country and stay for months at a time. In 2019, I lived in Brazil for 4 months, and my work went on fine. I held my webinars, I serviced my clients, and I put out my products as usual. So I did that like every year. I would just move from place to place, travel. So moving to Dubai wasn't really that big of a decision. I just took a leap, and again, you only live once.
Okay. Now you're 34, I think.
Yes.
What does it feel like? Do you feel fulfilled? How would you describe being 34?
I feel energetic. I feel happy. I feel like at 34, I've achieved things that I'm happy with, and I'm at a place where I feel optimistic about the future. And I started my journey pretty early-ish, and everything that I've done, the people I've met, they've been mostly pleasant and pleasurable experiences. And, I look back at 34 and I say thank you to my younger self for getting on this path early. And it's also a commitment to my much older self that, you know what, I'm going to make this a hell of a ride.
When you say you got on the path early, how old were you?
Well, right from when I was in university, right from when I was a kid, I've always been drawn to computers. When I was a kid, I accidentally learned a programming language. Accidentally, that's a weird thing to say. I think I was like 8, 9 years old. And my aunt in the UK sent me a birthday or Christmas present. And it was one of those mini laptops. It wasn't quite a laptop. It was a toy that looked like a laptop. The company name was VTech. I remember that from the logo on the package. So it was a toy that mimicked a laptop and would play on it. So there was this thing there that was called BASIC. I didn't know that it was a programming language. I thought it was a game like the other games. And I learned how to do the inputs so I could get the outputs. And I was so fascinated. Man, many years later, when I got into Benson Idahosa University to study computer science, they taught us they taught us Visual Basic. Yes, an advanced basic. They taught us Visual Basic programming as a course in school. And I was like, hold on a sec, this looks familiar. Why does this programming language look like something I've seen before? I'm like, oh my goodness, wasn't this the game I was playing when I was a kid?
I see.
And here it was. I had learned to program when I was a kid, but I didn't know what was programming. So yeah, I've always been on this path. I've always worked in computing. And even while I do my digital marketing and my teaching, my public speaking, my tech background has always given me a unique edge and a competitive advantage. So yeah, that's as far back as it goes. And I'm just glad that it provided me a foundation for where I'm headed.
In just a moment, John will be talking about his early childhood experiences and lessons, as well as the defining moments that shaped who he's become today. Stay with us. I'm Osheye, and you're listening to Origins Africa podcast. Hi, dear listener. If you love our show, please leave us a review on iTunes and Apple Podcast. You can also send us a tweet or comment on Instagram at OriginsAF. We love to read from you. Nope, not later. Yes, I read your mind. Do it now. Thanks a lot. Also click the subscribe button and share with a friend. Let's make a difference together, one origin story at a time. Catch our one-to-one newsletter where we share with you one lesson, 2 quotes, and 1 question from each episode published. You'll find it at originsafrica.substack.com. originsafrica.substack.com. If you like it, please click the like button, leave a comment, share with a friend, and subscribe. Also, you can now watch video snippets of some of our guest interviews. Simply go to Origins Africa Podcast on YouTube, Origins Africa Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like our videos, and share. Let's make a difference together, one origin story at a time. Hi guys, welcome back to Origins Africa Podcast. So, what was growing up like for John?
Growing up was interesting. I grew up in a lower middle class family of Nigeria. And that's a weird place to be because, again, my parents sacrificed a lot to ensure that we were all educated. For me in particular, they made sure that I attended schools that rich kids went to, even though we weren't rich. We were broke as heck. And it's weird when you're a broke kid going to a rich school. There are advantages and disadvantages. But the advantage there was that even though we didn't have much, I could see others. And so I could have an idea of how much better life could be, you know, and so it gave me something to aspire to. And so even at that age, you know, we acted so in such a classy way. You could never look at us and know that we were from, you know, a low income household. You could never look at us and just guess that we went, you know, sometimes days without food. You would never, we just looked different because of where we typically hung out. So yeah, that was it. I had my JSS 1 at Government College, Eric Moore, Lagos. Then I transferred to start my JS 2 in Federal Government College, Ogbomoso, Oyo State. And I did that JSS 2, JSS 3, SS 1. I picked up my command of Yoruba language there before transferring to Port Harcourt to finish my secondary education. So that's what growing up was like. We were all over the country, Lagos, Ogbomoso, Port Harcourt.
Was it just you or you and your family?
Me and my family, but the one that only I did was when I went off to Ogbomoso for secondary school, boarding school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, when I left them in Ibuzo, Delta State, to go to school in Benson Idahosa University, Benin City. And, you know, and from Benin City, I moved on to Lagos.
Okay. So going back a bit, you talked about, well, as a young kid going to the rich school, you mentioned the advantages and disadvantages, because I'm thinking in my head, there would be maybe, was there, I mean, low self-esteem, for instance, could set in, there could be insecurities.
Oh, yes, that's a definite disadvantage.
So how did you then, as a young kid, how was that, you experiencing that? How would you describe it then?
I manage them now.
So when you say you manage, so could you talk about, I guess, the challenges first, or the feelings and the struggle?
Because, you know, because you're a kid, you know, you're not educated on things that we adults know, like, you know, coping mechanisms, or you're just faced with stimulus and you react based on the wisdom available to you at the time, which is very limited as a child, you know, very limited. So as a kid, yeah, there was that, you know, I had to get used to certain things not being available to me, you know. My kids would talk about where they spend, my mates would talk about where they spend their summer holidays and so on. And, you know, I had none of those experiences, but I took mostly the positives, because from what they would say and their stories, I would imagine it gave me such a hyperactive imagination. and it made me always come top of class, because guess what? When I got home from school, because of how we lived, there was hardly electricity at home. And most of the time when there was electricity, our TV was usually bad. So because I was deprived of television and cartoons and comics, I had to find a way to get entertained. And so I began to read books. So I would go into my father's library and read all the books in there. So as a child, I would read his books on economics, macroeconomic principles. I read his novels. I read encyclopedias when encyclopedias were a thing. I read medical encyclopedias because I thought I was going to be a doctor.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so I read so much and I picked up a strong reading habit. And so it made my grammar much better than my mates. I wasn't doing it intentionally. It was just a side effect of, where life pushed me. So, but in the process, I developed a better grammar. My writing skills were being honed at that age. And so, yeah, I took that as an advantage. And it made me really, really smart, because while other people had recreation that they were putting their time into, all I could do was read. And when you read, you imagine. And so it helped the person that I am today at those formative years.
Interesting. Okay. And how did you find the transfers? I think I heard that transfers could be tough for some kids.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
I hated them. For example, my time in FGC Ubomosho, I hated it. I totally hated it because.
Why?
So my dad raised us all in isolation. So here's the thing: my dad was a very sophisticated man, but unfortunately he could only afford to raise us in some low income area of Surulere. Now, for that level of sophistication, he was very aware of certain dangers that we kids were unaware of. Now, at the time, I didn't know this was why. I mean, it's when I grew into adulthood that I began to understand why he did certain things at the time. So he never let us out of the house. The only time we left the house was to go to school, and when we would come back home. We couldn't even play in the compound. The boundary was the door to the house. So we had to be indoors. I never understood this. I never understood why. And I later understood that it's because of the volatility of the region that we lived in at the time. It was so easy to get into trouble, even if you were not looking for trouble. I mean, that was a time when, little kids could steal and get burnt alive on the streets. Now this was a reality that I was unaware of. I never knew those things existed until much later. And that's to show you how much of a job my father did shielding us from those realities. I mean, if you were a kid that grew up in Ikoyi and VI, you were well shielded from those things. But in Surulere, these things happened every day. And we never knew because we were shielded indoors. So we never had friends in the neighborhood. We never mixed with the people. My dad didn't want anybody teaching us any bad habits. So all we had were ourselves, me and my 3 siblings. So we were raised in seclusion. And so out of the blue, you're telling this kid who is 9 years old that he's going to boarding school in another state. What? That was a disastrous endeavor. Because I wasn't prepared to leave the house at 9 years old. I wasn't prepared to live in another environment outside of my house.
Are you the first born?
Yes, I'm the first child.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was prepared for that. So it was kind of like a culture shock for me. My adaptation was tough and slow. And also because I've always been small for my size. I'm small for my age. I had always been small for my age. So when I was 9 years old, I looked 6. Yeah. Even when I was 20 years old, I looked 15.
Which of course has its advantages and its disadvantages as well.
No. At that age, the disadvantage.
Fully,
But at this
I guess.
age, it's an advantage.
Yeah, you age well. Okay.
You tend to age well. You look good for your age and all that. But then you're so frail and weak and skinny, and I mean, it was crazy. It was terrible, But I went with it. When I did the whole thing, my grades dropped drastically. I didn't give two hoots about school. School was a survival.
Were you bullied?
Oh, well, anybody who went to FGC would know that you're first of all dodging all the seniors. You're spending all your energy dodging seniors, so there's not much energy spent on academics and all of that. So it was disastrous. But it was what my parents could afford at the time, and we had to bear up, play our parts. That time was over. After that, we had to move from Lagos to Port Harcourt, and off I went. It was done. And so I transferred to a day school, secondary school in Port Harcourt, and my grades went right back to the top where they ought to be.
Okay. And in Port Harcourt, did you guys start experiencing the environment, or you were still shielded?
Yeah, we're still shielded, but it was a mix because we're now older and we're now able to accept certain realities. So my father could talk to us about, because there was a lot of gangs even in the neighborhood. We were situated in a place called Woji Estate, to be precise. So there were gangs there, all kinds of people. Even in school, there were all kinds of people, and you're young, you want to have a sense of belonging. It's very easy to be seduced by the gangs. And next thing, you're a criminal. It just goes from 0 to 100 real quick. Nobody just says, I want to come to this world and be a criminal. It just happens, your parents aren't watching, this friend invites you to a party, next thing you're in deep. But at that point, we were older and we're able to understand, okay, this is why you have to be home by 5 p.m. That was curfew, 5 p.m. while it was still bright. This is why, this is this, and this is that. And, again, you can cut this out, but, Nigeria has been a jungle right from day one. It's been a jungle. There was this NSARS thing that was happening last year.
Yeah.
And it only started NSARS, that whole SARS madness has been in for as long as Nigeria has existed, at least from independence. Extrajudicial killings and extortion, it's always been in existence. Again, this is something that as a young child or young adult, I did not even know about, but my father knew very well. And it's not something that my father really felt. My father wasn't a very vulnerable kind of person who would just give you orders and expect the orders to be carried out. If you understood, good for you, But the real reason for him keeping us sheltered, he didn't always feel vulnerable enough to share. His biggest fear was that, no, I don't want to lose my kids. And if anything happens to my kids, I don't even have money to bail them out. I don't even have money to even give a police officer to please let my kid out. He's not a bad person. So the best thing he could do was to tell us, hey, these are your boundaries. Don't go here, don't go there, and that helped us stay out of trouble until we're old enough to understand the larger realities that, look, you don't even have to be a criminal. You can just be minding your business and, Nigerian police can just victimize you, maybe even murder you. And it just ends there.
Just a curious question, with the restrictions and boundaries, how come you were rebellious?
Well, at that age, I had an inclination for the study of wisdom. Now, of course, I was rebellious inside, but so I had a healthy fear for pain. So I just felt like there was a lot of pain I could avoid in life if I could just listen to my dad. My dad is a human being, is not perfect, but I felt like, he's not perfect. Sometimes he's going to be wrong, but he's likely going to be right more times than he's wrong. So why not just listen to him? Maybe one day I'll understand why these things are supposed to be.
Interesting. And what would you say shaped this perspective you had?
All right. So I remember one trip to the village in Ibuzo, Delta State, and then I was pretty restive. I wasn't like a troublesome person, but inside I had this boundless energy that I was looking for means of expression. But anyway, I was sitting at home alone. My dad had gone out, and my father's friend came by. By the way, my father was a pastor while he was alive, and so his his friends were mostly pastors. So his friend came by to see my dad. I said, okay, my dad is not home, but you can sit here outside with me and wait for him. He'll be back soon. So both of us sat outside there. And while we're sitting there was this man who was walking with a limp on the street. He was well dressed, but walking with a limp, and he was ringing a bell and yelling very loud, repent, repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand. And he didn't say exactly that. I think it said something like that in Igbo. And I was slightly irritated by what he was doing, honestly. But anyway, I just sat there and just looked away. So my father's friend sitting there now turned to me to make conversation, and he asked me, do you know why that man is limping? I said, no, I don't know. I don't know who he is. He said, that man, I can't remember his name, but he mentioned a man's name. I said, okay, what about him? He said that back in the day while he was a younger man, that he had a lot of money. He was so wealthy, but everybody knew that he was a drug trafficker. He used to smuggle drugs for the who is who in society. And at that, he had cars, he had money, he had friends, all kinds of people flocked around him, and life was good, And then one day he was, doing his regular drug routes and all that. And he just felt like he could double the amount of money he was making by taking some extra drugs in some areas of his body he had never tried before. So he basically put them up his butthole. We can censor that if you wanna. Okay, so
oh wow.
So he put them up his butthole, and he wasn't gonna get caught. But I think he got on the plane, and as soon as he got on the plane, the story was that he began to sweat profusely and he collapsed. They had to rush him out of the plane to seek medical attention. And again, this was way back. Because it's not like today where, medical science has really improved and come a long way. That was way back. Nobody expects that you put hard drugs in that kind of place. So nobody would even suspect what's going on with you unless you're confessing. But the person that should confess has collapsed. So what are you going to do? So by the time they could salvage anything, there were some complications, and some part of his buttock had to be removed in order to save his life. It was complicated. He spent everything he had just saving his life at the hospital, in hospital bills. And of course, when you get caught like that, even if you're able to pay your way out of that problem, those who were giving the person drugs to smuggle will probably just disappear because this guy has become public.
True.
So his means of livelihood disappeared, all the cars, the houses, the properties, everything gone. And in that moment, he found God. Wow. What a wow. And so that's why now he's going around preaching and telling young people to be careful and all of that. And I'm looking at him like, man, did you have to go through all of that to simply learn what I know now? Like, did you really have to get whooped by life? I mean, I don't judge his decisions. I mean, things happen. People are formed by different circumstances, their environments, their upbringing, the different temptations. I get it. But there and then I said, that I would give a listening ear to wisdom wherever I could be found, because I don't want to have to go through all this pain to learn something I could learn from instruction. People say that experience is the best teacher. Well, I see where that applies, but if you can learn from instruction, it's way faster. It is way faster. You can save yourself a whole lot of pain. So rather than wait for the experience, I mean, there's some experience that is inevitable, but where you can learn from instruction, trustworthy instruction and direction, I think you should take it. And so I took it. And so that story kept me straight. Now, who knows? I don't know if that whole thing was a fabrication or a machination that was planned by my father and his friend to keep his firstborn son in line. I don't know. It's something he can do, but it was still a great lesson to learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So it's okay to say, should I say you had, the person who had a greater influence on you was your dad growing up, or was he your mom?
Yes, my father.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't take anything away from my mom. My mom was a fantastic nurturer. She took care of us. She took care of the house. She made sure that everyone was well catered to. When we snuck out of the house, I mean, because there's a limit to which you can imprison us. When we snuck out of the house to play football and we would get injured, because our bodies were pretty tender because we were kept indoors. Mm-hmm. So we weren't strong like the street kids. So we would get injured pretty easily. She would catch us, first of all, beat us, and then treat our wounds. But we'll still go out again and play football, and once in a while, occasionally, yeah. So, but when it came to my philosophies in life and building me as a man, that came mostly from the relationship that I had with my father.
And what would you say the key lessons were that he passed on to you, or key life philosophies?
Well, my father was an extremist. He would wake me up at 4 a.m. I mean, equality, right? He should wake up the whole family, but no, he'll wake just me. He'll wake me up, bring me to the living room, and both of us would just start reading the book of Proverbs. And he would ask me to explain it. I'm like, waiting consign me now. How about I was just sleeping.
And how old were you then?
So I think I was like, I think from when I turned 12, because my father, again, like I said, was some kind of extremist. So there's this thing in Pentecostal Christianity that people made up and called the age of accountability. There's no such thing. They just made it up. They said that because Jesus Christ was 12 years old when he started teaching in the temple. So 12 years old is the age from where God holds you accountable for your actions. So they called it the age of accountability, 12 years old. So the moment I turned 12, we don't hear word again.
I see.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it.
You were saying something before I asked how old you were. You're talking about the philosophies and lessons it passed on, and then you're going on how you would wake up at 4 a.m. You'd read Proverbs and you explain.
Oh yeah, so we read Proverbs, we read the book of Psalms. Blessed is he who sits not in the seat of the scornful, or in the way of the ungodly. My son, if sinners entice you, consent thou not. And I would learn these things back to back. And it was really intensified at the moment when I was leaving to boarding school, because he wanted to be sure that I had strong philosophies guiding my way, but because I was leaving the house, I was going to be exposed to a whole new different environment. I think his biggest fear was that I would get exposed to pornography, outside the house, but we are human beings. The fear came to pass because I left the house. I went to boarding school. It was so what you're talking about, man, you might just imprison me forever so that I will not see those things or know that they exist, But those sermons and those teachings really stayed with me and ensured that I did not make the mistakes that some of my mates in school, then with lesser guidance, made. So my mates in school, they made some terrible mistakes that they didn't even know were mistakes at the time. But because maybe their parents were so busy and so successful and accomplished that they didn't even have time to look at the kids. A lot of people I went to school with that were from rich households were not raised by their parents. They were raised by their housemates, So that some were raised by their drivers, and so that was a silver lining for me that, even though because my dad's circumstances were not as financially pleasant, he spent a lot of time at home, and he could spend time with us and monitor us and teach us and actually school us on what life meant and how we should conduct ourselves as people of faith and as people who had great pride in where we're coming from.
Okay. So your earliest dream then was to be a medical doctor?
Yes, and that was only because my uncle, my father's brother, who I really admired, was a doctor.
Oh, okay. So I assume you went to the science class.
Well, yes, but in primary one, again, I told you I went to rich kids school. So I went to the one school that had a working computer back in my primary one. I don't know how old I was back then, but that was sometime in the 90s, in the mid 90s or mid or early 90s. So it was called Pampers Private School. So primary one, they gave us what they called computer science practicals. I'd never seen a computer in my life. And they led us to the computer laboratory. And that the job or the exercise we were given to do was to play this game called Pac-Man. Now, I didn't get to play the game because others went ahead of me and were playing, but I was just watching and I was hypnotized. Did you ever know about Pac-Man, the game?
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay, it's like one of the oldest computer games ever, and I would you would know it, but maybe not by the name. Is that game where there is this thing that is eating dots on a screen and being chased by things all around the screen?
I'm literally trying to Google it now.
Okay, yeah, you'll see the gameplay. One of the oldest games ever, and I was just transfixed. I had never ever seen anything like it in my life. And that was where I handed my lab coat over to my uncle. I'm not doing it again. I'm going to be a computer scientist. I want to be in whatever field it was that created this thing. And that was where I made that decision.
And did everybody accept or embrace the idea?
Now, this is something that I did not see the importance of until I became a man. My father didn't care, as long as I was going to be the best. Because if we did not have money, at least I had to be coming first in class. That was the only thing that was the deal. Yes, we didn't have money, but the one we must have is that he can use us to brag that we are coming first in class. So yes, if you're not a doctor, you want doctor, just be coming first. If you're a computer, you want to computer, shall be coming first. There's no second place in this house. So whatever it was. Now, I didn't understand how much of an asset this was, that my dad allowed me to do whatever I wanted to do. I thought it was normal. Until I got to university and I met people in university that, why studying law? My father said I should study law. I met friends who would say, oh, I'm studying medicine, even though I hate it. And I don't think I was born to study medicine, but I'm doing this for my parents. And I felt like, what? Do people like that exist? Because I came from a household where that was never an issue. Do what you like, but just be the best at it. Again, I don't know what my father would have said. I don't know if he would have maintained that philosophy if I said I wanted to read poetry. But anyway, we'll never know. We'll never know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a few more questions, I think, before I move past your childhood. I know we had talked about the secondary school bit and the rich kids school. So growing up then, were there any esteem issues you had or insecurity issues?
Oh yes, I used to be incredibly short. Matter of fact, my father secretly thought that I was going to be a dwarf.
You were short? Interesting.
I was short. Yeah, I was always short. As a matter of fact, when I started growing, my father was shocked. My father has had a very confusing and contradictory character sometimes. He saw me one day like, you are growing. I was shocked, like, is that not supposed to be? Like, what do you want, old man? So yeah, I was always short in all my classes. I was always short, and so yeah, that did come with its self-esteem issues. My growth started like in my mid-20s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was a very late bloomer. My physical development started really late. I didn't have any facial hair until very late, and all of that. So yeah, you could be an SS1 student, and people think that you are a JS1 student. It's just it could be.
And
really
how did that affect you then?
Not really that much. I wasn't because of the kind of childhood I had.
Okay.
My mind created coping mechanisms, and so I always saw the bright side of things.
Okay.
I mean, things were so bad. I mean, there are a number of things, a number of which you can react to that kind of deprivation in childhood. Things were so bad. Some people would either go maybe insane or become criminals, or your brain, because it has to survive somehow, it just creates a reality inside a reality. It just gives you a way to cope. And so my way of coping was always looking at the bright side, always looking for something I could look forward to that would be pleasant. So I would look for the bright side. So how did I cope? How did it affect me? Not that much. It wasn't really much of an issue. I knew that.
Naturally been an optimist.
Yeah, it made me naturally an optimist. I knew that, yes, there were things I couldn't do because I was naturally smaller than my peers. You know, I couldn't do track and field. I mean, it was so embarrassing. When I was in SS2, because of my size, they made me run with JS3 boys. So I couldn't even run with senior boys because I was small. And at the school I attended then in Port Harcourt had a rule that all the boys must be involved in sports. You could not.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have participated.
I wouldn't have participated because that was embarrassing. And even among junior boys, I was not even first. I was like fourth or so.
Okay.
so that was crazy, you know. But I just took it as humor, and I think it contributed also to my great sense of humor, because I always found a laugh in everything and a joke in everything. I found a way to make it a light situation and make it so. How did it affect me? Not really. I mean, things happen. Not really. I feel like there were worse things happening in the world than, oh, boo-hoo-hoo, I'm short. You know, I was good, basically. The biggest thing I had to deal with was just uncertainty about the future.
Okay.
You know, because things were pretty bleak. Okay, what university would I go to? Who would I become in life? What was the likelihood I would ever become like Bill Gates? Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Bill Gates at the time, you know, because I was born in Black Africa. I was born in Nigeria, third world Africa, arguably the poverty capital of the world. What are the odds that you can really live your dreams, you know? So that's where most of my mind spent its energy, not in the things I knew were temporary.
Okay. And it was your upbringing that was that what made you always strive to be the first or the best?
Oh yes, it made me really competitive. Since I couldn't compete in sports, I could kick everyone's ass in academics. Yeah, and later on at computing, you know, so I overcompensated for that by being very studious and having a sharp wit.
Okay. Defining moments when you were growing up. I heard you talk about, I am sure, the experience you had with your dad's friend where he told you about the man who lived. I am sure that must have been a defining moment for you.
Oh, yes.
Shaped who you've become. Any other defining moments you had growing up that shaped who you've become today?
Defining moments. That's something I have to think deeply about because I don't remember that much. But one defining moment was the first time I ever saw a computer in my school.
Okay.
And it just pulled me and it gave me a sense of direction. It was my compass to who I would become in future.
Okay.
And I think about the school that it was and how lucky I was to attend that school that likely had the only computer in that area or in that local government, very possibly. And what if I didn't go to that school? How different my life would have been, you know? And so it made me consider myself very lucky. That was quite a moment for me. Another moment for me would be when I got admission to Benson Idahosa University in Benin City.
Okay.
But before then, I was first at the University of Port Harcourt. Oh my goodness. What I'm going to say now is just going to debrand Nigeria, but it's So I got into the University of Port Harcourt. Now, in Nigeria, people don't study what they want to study. The government gives you a course.
True.
to study, and that's what you have to study on. It's terrible, a very terrible way to raise what you want to call future leaders. So anyway, you say, oh, I want to study this. You say, nope, you are going to study that. It's crazy. Anyway, I always wanted to study computer science, but they said I had to study physics, electronics. Okay, cool. I had friends who were studying computer science, and I would always ask them what they were doing.
Sorry to interrupt, but just to backtrack a bit, I think the experience I have is that maybe you're at JAM and you didn't get. So is that what happened with the University of Port Harcourt? You didn't meet cutoff for computer, and you were told to study physics, electronics, or it was something else?
Well, I didn't meet the cutoff, but hey, come on now. People don't meet the cutoff, but they get in there. So here's the thing. I didn't meet the cutoff for computer science. So who now manufactured a cutoff for physics? And what are you basing my ability to understand computing? Let me tell you what it was. Chemistry. I had an F9 in chemistry, and that's what disqualified me from computer science.
Oh, okay.
What has chemistry got to do with computing?
Valid question.
Nothing. So that's what disqualified me, and so that just made no sense. Okay. But anyway, I stuck with it in the hopes that if I invested a year, they would allow me to switch, but that didn't happen. But anyway, I was watching my mates who did computer science, and the funny thing is that some of those guys who did computer science, their initial hope was to do medicine, but they were bounced from medicine to computer science.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Another guy, his dream was to do civil engineering, but they bounced from there to computer science. So we're all misfits.
I see.
We're all misfits in the different departments. Those who came there and actually studied what they really had in mind were like the minority, the top 1%. But anyway, I would check out my mates and what they were doing in class. And I saw one of them, they were given an assignment. The programming, this was what year? 2004. The assignment this guy was given was in Fortran, like Fortran. I was like, wait a minute. Now, my father had his master's degree in London in 1984. After he was done with his master's, he brought a truck, these trunk boxes our parents used back in the day. He had a whole trunk box full of books he brought back from London.
Okay.
So when I was born, when I grew up, like I told you earlier, and I used to go and ravage his library and read whatever I could find. I remember seeing a book in my father's library called Fortran 77 for Humans. I said, oh my God, what my father studied in school in 1984 is what they are teaching computer science students in University of Port Harcourt in 2004. What is this? And we'll see them hunting over a computer, programming Fortran. Hey! Anyway, I knew I had enough. And I worked out some sort of compromise with my father and his brothers, and they agreed to sponsor my change of school. And they sent me to a private university where they allowed you to study whatever you wanted. And that was Benson Idahosa University. So I just gave it that build up, so that one of my defining moments was getting admission to BIU. I am blessed to have gone to that university. I never stop talking about them. I'm like a brand ambassador almost, right? I am so blessed that I got to go there. That was the first time I saw a guidance and counseling unit that worked in Nigeria.
Okay.
Like, I got there the first day and the woman said, hello. So she looked at my form and I filled in computer science. She said, are you sure you really want to do computer science? Let me explain your options. I have options.
Are you serious?
I was shocked. She said,
interested.
Yeah, you have options. If you want to graduate and have an edge in a math related field, you can study computer science and math. It's a course option on its own. However, this requires a great deal of math. If you don't like math a lot, I would advise you don't do this one. There's also computer engineering. Computer engineering has many applications. She would advise you and tell you the risks of each one, what they would entail, and how each one would affect your school life. In case you're not someone that likes to read a lot, just do something easier. She would advise, there was computer science and math, computer science and economics. In case you wanted to work in finance someday, computer science and education. Then there was computer engineering. There was even computer science and physics. And then there was just the pure computer science. So like, so based on everything that I've said, which one do you think you would have a better experience with? You don't need to answer now. You can go to your hostel, think about it. You have a week to come back and let me know, and I'll put it in your form. I was like,
I never experienced that.
When we're in school, BIU, people in government, like federal schools, will say, you people are living in a glorified secondary school, a glorified daycare. I say,
I can remember that.
You guys don't know what you are missing. I've been to both, so I know the difference. I never had to look over my shoulder for cult activities for one day because they were non-existent. They policed that aspect of student life so rigorously so that we could just focus on our academics. And that's why you see that a lot of these universities churn out a lot of first-class graduates. People who come from other schools quarrel with this because they're like, if there are so many first-class graduates, that means they make things easy for them. No, that is not the case. The exams are just as hard, but we are allowed to focus. Lecturers are not allowed to victimize you. We don't go on strike. There's no call to activity. The school, university is safe. The school keeps us in. They don't, so they expel bad elements as quickly as they prop up. So you just focus on school, and so that was such a fantastic aspect of look, I remember just the moment I entered Uniport was when they were just closing the 9 months ASU strike. Do you know what 9 months is to be on strike for? 2003 was when they were just ending a 9-month strike. Now that 9 months, these guys at Jobaman used to build their startup. That was the 9 months. Read their story. I read their story. One of the founders is an acquaintance of mine. We both won the Future Awards at some point. So we had some conversations and we've done some work together. And in their story, they were both students of I think Obafemi Awolowo University Ife. And that 9 month strike hit, and they were like, school ain't starting anytime soon. Let's do something productive. They used 9 month strike to create a startup that changed the world. So that's just to show you the impact of that kind of strike. 9 month strike. If somebody got pregnant, then the child would don't come out at that time. 9 month strike. Who does that in good conscience? But anyway, so private university, there are fewer uncertainties of when will I graduate? Time is passing.
True.
You come for a 4-year course, you're spending 7 years or more. So that was that certainty. And then, BIU, that was the first time I saw a computer lab that worked. I was actually shocked. Like that just show you the level of trauma. I didn't expect, I just pushed the power button just as a joke. Like I didn't expect it to come on. And it came on. It's working.
You weren't expecting it to come on?
Yeah, because the ones in Uniport were for photos.
Oh, wow.
They didn't work, But the computers in the lab, they all worked. And at that time, there was limited internet all over Nigeria, but you could go to the library in BIU, and with your library card, you had access to 1 hour of internet access every day. I was like, what? I used this. Well, you had to show that you were using it for research. So yeah, I showed I was using it for research and amongst other things. Amen. So I took advantage of my 1 hour every day. I mean, that was fun. I spent my days and my nights in the computer lab. Okay. And that really formed my foundations. They helped me. I really grew so much. And yeah, so turning point for me was being admitted to BIU. It properly incubated me and set the foundation for who I am today.
What were you often researching about?
Well, I was just exposed to the luxury of computers for the first time. So I was just learning to program. Like, okay, what do I need to program? So in 100 level, that's our first year, we weren't taught any core programming classes, but from our second year, they taught us web design. I mean, web design as a course in school. Here you tried for also. Web design was a course in school. Visual Basic Programming. I learned to program that as a course in school. The only one I hated was Pascal.
Okay.
But, I managed. We learned assembly language in school. What else did we learn? We learned networking, computer networking. Our networking curriculum was so good that you could write the course in school and then go outside and write the professional exam, CCNA, and pass.
Wow.
What else did we do? So the whole thing. So and then we did PHP, web programming, JavaScript.
Interesting.
In computers, and not just doing it. We had the computer lab where we could go and practice if we didn't have a laptop, because few of us had laptops at that time. So if you didn't have to go to the computer lab, and you could practice, save your documents in our little diskettes that we used at the time before we graduated to flash drives and memory cards. And so that was such an amazing thing. So my research was, I wanted to look for how to program like a calculator, the first things that we did. Then I moved on to learning how to create web pages. I started designing web pages with Microsoft Front Page. And then we moved on to Macromedia Dreamweaver before it became Adobe Dreamweaver. And, we just built that up from there. So that's what mostly I was researching. And of course, so some of our other courses too that needed some research, I would go research it, but it was mostly things that would help me to program because I was so fascinated by it.
So John graduated from Benson Idahosa University. But, like he said earlier, he graduated with the uncertainty of how he would live his dreams. Join us next week as we explore how John Obidi moved on from Benson Idahosa University to become the social media expert, personality development expert, and online business consultant, amongst other things we know him for today. Thank you for listening to our show this week. If you liked it, do leave us a review, a comment, and share with your friends. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend and to tell another friend. We would also love to read from you, so please do send us a tweet or leave a comment on Instagram at OriginsAF. You can also write to us at originsafricapodcast@gmail.com. Remember, do subscribe at wherever you get your podcast: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, amongst others. Catch our 121 newsletter where we share with you one lesson, 2 quotes, and 1 question from each episode published. You'll find it at originsafrica.substack.com. originsafrica.substack.com. And of course, if you like it, please click the like button, leave a comment, share with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe. I'm Oshaya, and you've been listening to Origins Africa Podcast. Bye for now.
My father told me life is not a bed of roses. You gotta put your way into the plow, do the work to smell the roses. Don't back down. Whatever you do, don't back down. When things get tight, keep the drive, keep the faith, stay in the fight. Draw strength from the motherland, let our heroes hold your hand. You are the answer, friend. Origins Africa.